I'm sorry, but what if saying I'm sorry is one of the fastest ways to lose control of a situation? That's the part no one teaches you. You were raised to believe apologies are noble. That they build bridges, show strength, and make you the better person. But what if that bridge only leads to your own disempowerment? What if every carefully worded apology you gave wasn't a sign of maturity, but a silent surrender? In this video, we'll break down why most apologies don't serve you, they serve others. When to hold your silence. How to own your actions without bending your spine. How to navigate conflict with strategy, not emotional reflex. And most importantly, you'll learn the specific tactics to do it, when to stay silent, how to assert boundaries without apology, and how to hold your frame when others try to make guilt a weapon. Because real power doesn't ask for forgiveness, it makes you think twice before expecting it. Let's get into it. Here's the truth no one wants to admit: most people don't want your apology, they want the upper hand. They want your admission, your guilt, your lowered eyes. And once you give them that, you shift the dynamic. You become the one who's wrong. And they get to decide when you've done enough. When you're forgiven. When the power balance is restored. And that power rarely returns to you. This isn't about avoiding accountability. It's about recognizing when an apology is being used not to heal, but to humiliate. When you say sorry not because you were wrong, but because you were pressured into peace. Manipulated into silence. Cornered into submission. Machiavelli didn't avoid apologies because he lacked ethics. He avoided them because he understood the game. In politics, in business, in personal relationships, the first one to apologize often becomes the one who's blamed. Apologizing feels like the right thing to do, and sometimes, it is. But in many cases, especially in power-driven environments, it functions less like a bridge and more like a white flag. The moment you say I'm sorry, you're not just admitting fault, you're transferring leverage. You're giving the other person the emotional upper hand, and depending on who's across from you, they won't use that to repair the connection. They'll use it to reframe the entire interaction in their favor. In the mind of a manipulator, your apology isn't interpreted as self-awareness, it's interpreted as weakness. It tells them you can be pushed. That your emotional regulation matters more to you than your position. That you're willing to trade power for harmony. And once that message is received, they know how to play you. Apologizing makes you smaller in the eyes of someone who was never looking for resolution in the first place. Because not everyone wants peace. Some want hierarchy. And if you hand it to them wrapped in guilt and soft words, they'll take it and then ask for more. More accountability. More self-correction. More proof that you really mean it. They'll turn a simple conflict into a performance, and your role is clear: you're the one crawling. Even worse, an apology can backfire with people who thrive on control. In that case, it doesn't resolve tension, it sharpens it. You just taught them that discomfort is all it takes to get you to fold. You've shown them your trigger. And next time, they won't wait for a mistake, they'll manufacture one. They'll frame your silence as neglect, your confidence as arrogance, your boundaries as cruelty. Then they'll wait for you to apologize for simply standing your ground. This is how power leaks, not in dramatic betrayals, but in tiny moments where your desire to be understood overrides your need to stay grounded. And nothing punctures your posture like a misused apology. Of course, not all apologies are wrong. But the Machiavellian knows that the context defines the cost. Apologizing to someone with equal respect, mutual trust, and a genuine desire to repair? That's alignment. That strengthens the structure. But apologizing to someone who sees every interaction as a power play? That's sabotage, and you're the architect of your own downfall. In power dynamics, an apology is never just a statement. It's a signal. It tells the room who holds the emotional burden and who doesn't. And unless you're deeply aware of the roles being played around you, You might give that signal away too soon, too easily, and to the wrong audience. There's also the problem of perception. The more often you apologize, the more people begin to associate you with error. It doesn't matter if your apologies are sincere or if your mistakes were minor. Repetition rewires perception. You stop being seen as careful and start being seen as clumsy. Not respectful, but unsure. And in environments where confidence is currency, that perception will cost you. This is why the most powerful people are slow to apologize, not because they don't make mistakes, but because they calculate when acknowledgement adds value and when it undermines it. They understand that timing is everything. That silence can be strategic. That owning something privately and correcting it internally is often more effective than handing someone a public performance they didn't earn. Apologies, when used incorrectly, create imbalance. You begin to over-explain, over-justify, and overcompensate, not because the situation demands it, but because you've already stepped into a lower frame. And the more you stay there, the harder it becomes to climb back out. So what's the solution? It's not to stop caring. It's not to become cold or rigid. It's to become intentional. To recognize when an apology is appropriate and when it's a trap. To feel guilt without feeding it to someone who will weaponize it. To correct your course without handing over your compass. Powerful people don't apologize less because they're heartless, they apologize less because they understand structure. They know that their presence, their tone, and their energy communicate more than words ever could. And when they do apologize, it lands with force, because it's rare, earned, and real. That's the difference. An apology shouldn't be your default. It should be your final move, not a knee-jerk reflex, but a conscious decision made from strength, not pressure. Because in the world of power, the first person to lower their eyes often loses the room. To understand why apologies, especially public or emotional ones, should be used with surgical precision, you need to understand how Machiavelli viewed human behavior, power, and regret. Contrary to the watered-down image many have today, Machiavelli wasn't simply advocating cold-hearted manipulation or blind ambition. He was identifying patterns, the mechanics of influence, survival, and authority in environments where moral purity wasn't just ineffective, it was dangerous. In The Prince, Machiavelli didn't waste time with idealism. He spoke directly to those in positions of influence who wanted to keep it. And in that world, regret, at least the kind that bends the spine and invites pity, was a liability. Not because mistakes should be ignored, but because how you acknowledge them shapes the battlefield. You don't lead through apology, you lead through adjustment. You don't admit failure to your enemies and hope they forgive you, you analyze, recalibrate, and re-enter stronger. This is the core of what people call Machiavellianism today. Often confused with sociopathy or heartless cunning, its true nature is deeper and more unsettling, it's strategic emotional discipline. It's the refusal to expose yourself to people who haven't earned your vulnerability. And regret, particularly when shared with the wrong audience, becomes ammunition in the hands of those who were waiting for a sign of your weakness. Machiavelli saw regret as useful only when it produces change, not when it's performed for approval. He understood that in high-stakes games, courts, kingdoms, corporations, most people aren't watching for your honesty. They're watching for an opening. A crack in your armor. A chance to rewrite the narrative. The moment you admit fault, especially too publicly or too emotionally, you give them that chance. You let them define the frame, and once you're inside someone else's frame, it's nearly impossible to move without justification. Machiavelli was clear, the goal of a leader, or any individual navigating power, is not to be seen as flawless, but to be perceived as composed. Stability. Confidence. Strategic awareness. These traits earn respect. But apologies, when too frequent or too vulnerable, muddy that perception. They make you look uncertain about your own direction. And the second you seem unsure, people stop following and start circling. It's also worth noting that Machiavelli's era wasn't kind to those who wore their hearts on their sleeves. Neither is ours, really. We like to pretend modern society rewards honesty and self-awareness. But too often, what it really rewards is dominance disguised as concern. The person you apologize to? They may nod politely. But inside, they've clocked your insecurity, and you just dropped a level in the social hierarchy. Apologizing, then, becomes a kind of spiritual tax, a transaction that doesn't reduce your burden, but adds interest over time. You feel lighter for a moment, but the perception you create lasts longer than your relief. Especially in professional, high-performance, or competitive environments, the echo of an unnecessary apology lingers. People remember that you bent. That you lowered your eyes. That you made yourself smaller to smooth the moment, and once you've done it once, they know you'll likely do it again. Machiavelli would say, regret is for reflection, not confession. Fix the mistake, strengthen your position, and keep moving. Because what builds power isn't public penance, it's private correction. Not every misstep needs an audience. Not every error demands an explanation. And not every emotion is meant to be shared. The truth is, most people don't want your honesty, they want your leverage. Your status. Your confidence. And if regret chips away at any of that, even slightly, they'll take what's left and use it to elevate themselves. This isn't cynicism, it's structural awareness. It's understanding that social dynamics aren't always moral. They're tactical. So the next time you feel the impulse to apologize, pause. Ask yourself, is this about real repair? Or is this about control, theirs, not mine? Am I actually making peace, or am I softening my image so I don't feel the tension of holding my ground? Machiavelli's answer is simple: protect your position first. Because once you've given away your power in the name of being good, you'll spend the rest of your energy trying to get it back. Theory without execution is just entertainment. And Machiavelli wasn't writing for the entertained, he was writing for the empowered. You can understand all the psychology, all the dynamics of regret and power, but if you don't know how to move through the world with that knowledge, you're still vulnerable. So here's how it looks in practice. Here's how to use strategic silence and unapologetic behavior to sharpen your presence, protect your power, and train the world to treat you differently. First, learn to pause instead of apologizing. The next time you feel the urge to say "I'm sorry," don't. Stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong, or am I just afraid of disapproval? Often, we apologize not out of guilt but out of discomfort. We want to fill the silence. We want to smooth the tension. But tension is a tool. Let it work for you. Learn to hold the moment instead of trying to fix it with words. Second, replace apologies with clarity. Instead of saying "I'm sorry I'm late," say "Thanks for waiting." Instead of "I'm sorry, I just think," say "Here's what I see." Don't shrink into your speech. Don't pad your presence with self-blame. Every time you default to sorry, you signal that you're on the back foot, that you're asking for permission. And Machiavellian thinkers don't ask for permission. They take space with precision. Third, practice assertive silence. When someone disrespects you, undermines you, or crosses a boundary, don't explain. Don't beg. Don't plead your case. Go silent. Let the moment hang. This silence isn't weakness, it's control. Most people are uncomfortable with it. They'll fill it. They'll justify. They'll reveal themselves. You simply watch. That's power. That's how predators sort themselves from prey, by who needs to explain and who doesn't. Fourth, use boundaries as your default, not your defense. Boundaries aren't things you create when you're angry. They're things you live by. Decide what kind of access people get to your time, your energy, your mind, and enforce that silently. Don't announce it. Don't threaten. Just shift. If someone speaks over you, don't call it out, stop rewarding them with your attention. If someone repeatedly disrespects your values, stop giving them context. Remove the energy and let your absence teach the lesson. 5th. Build your identity around strength, not softness. Too often, we're told to be nice, to be agreeable, to prioritize other people's comfort. But Machiavellian strategy isn't about comfort, it's about clarity. Build a self-image that centers on resilience, intelligence, and autonomy. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to dominate. You simply need to stop apologizing for taking up space. When you do, the world recalibrates. People start asking what you think, not telling you who to be. 6th. Reward respect, not guilt. Most social systems are built on guilt. We're taught to feel bad for setting limits, for saying no, for not returning every message or agreeing with every opinion. But that guilt is a lever. If you bend to it, people will keep pulling it. So shift your emotional reward system. Instead of feeling good for being liked, feel good for being respected. Instead of valuing approval, value alignment. Ask yourself, is this behavior in service of my principles, or just my fear? 7th. Strategically withdraw when necessary. There are times when words make things worse. When someone is expecting you to grovel, argue, or beg, and you do none of it. You just leave. You don't storm out. You don't slam doors. You simply exit the emotional economy and take your value with you. Strategic withdrawal makes people confront themselves. It rewires their expectations. And most importantly, it preserves your energy for people and projects that actually matter. 8th. Make silence part of your presence. You don't need to comment on everything. You don't need to respond right away. You don't need to tell people why you're upset, why you're busy, or why you're not available. Strategic silence is a message, one that says, I know what I'm doing. I don't need validation. I'm not here to entertain your insecurity. When used intentionally, your silence will start to speak louder than your most convincing arguments ever could. 9th. Stop apologizing for evolving. One of the most manipulative demands people make is that you stay consistent, not in values, but in predictability. The second you grow, distance yourself, or shift your focus, they call it selfish, cold, changed. And maybe you are changed. That's the point. Don't explain your growth. Let your results justify it. Your evolution isn't something to apologize for, it's something to protect. 10th. Understand that silence isn't absence, it's presence with discipline. Strategic silence doesn't mean you vanish. It means you move deliberately. You hold your power instead of handing it away for approval. You let others reveal themselves while you stay grounded. You build a reputation for being thoughtful, unpredictable, and controlled. That's the kind of person people don't test, not because you threaten them, but because they can't quite read you. This is the Machiavellian method: self-possession over self-blame, control over comfort, presence over performance. No loud declarations. No desperate explanations. Just a quiet refusal to hand over your authority, no matter how much pressure is applied. You don't owe apologies to people who misunderstand your strength. You owe it to yourself to never dilute it. If you've watched this far, you already know this isn't just theory. It's strategy. And if any part of today's video hit something real in you, I urge you, stay with it until the end. Because this final section goes beyond Machiavellian tactics. It's where clarity meets conscience, and where real power is built not just on control, but on integrity. And if this resonated, there's more. This channel is packed with content that digs even deeper into influence, dark psychology, silent power, and strategic self-respect. So when you're done here, explore the other videos, you'll find tools that fit your mind. Now let's address what most people miss. Machiavellianism is often misunderstood. It's not about cruelty. It's about control. It's not about deception for the sake of winning, it's about knowing how people move, so you don't get moved by accident. But if you take it too far, if you strip away all vulnerability, all honesty, all emotional risk, you don't become strong. You become numb. You stop connecting. You stop caring. And you start mistaking paranoia for strategy. That's the danger. Because some apologies are real. Some regret is genuine. And sometimes, the strongest move isn't silence, it's saying, I was wrong, and meaning it. Not to be liked. Not to gain control. But because it aligns with your principles. True power doesn't come from never bending, it comes from knowing when it matters most to stand firm, and when it means more to lean in. Machiavelli believed in self-preservation, yes, but he also believed in legacy. In the idea that your actions, over time, form a pattern. A reputation. And that matters more than any one tactical win. So here's the balance. Don't apologize out of fear. Don't say sorry just to smooth over discomfort or manipulate perception. But if your actions broke something real, trust, integrity, your own values, then don't hide behind silence. Speak with clarity. Own it without groveling. Apologize from strength, not submission. That's the difference between weakness and leadership. Machiavellianism, at its best, is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. It's knowing when to speak, and when to remain quiet. When to protect yourself, and when to put your pride aside for something bigger. So if you're building power, build it with depth. With awareness. With precision. But don't lose the human beneath the armor. And if you're ready for more clarity, more tools, more strategy, keep watching. Because the next video might be the one that puts everything into place. Subscribe. Leave comment. Stay sharp. And never apologize for evolving.